So how's everything going with Rivals now, Brian? Because we've talked for a few years, and you're with how long have you been covering Auburn sports with Rivals?
Let's see. I've been doing it for 21, 22 years, and all but three of them have been with Rivals. So,
Wow, that's a long time.
yep.
I didn't even realize Rivals was in business that long.
Oh yeah, started back in 1999, I believe,
Yeah,
sometime around there.
time flies, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
And look, you cover more than just football, but we have you on here on our football network. So maybe one of these days, when we do talk basketball, if Auburn is in the middle of some sort of a Final Four run, we could talk college basketball because that's a big deal too. You know, Bruce
Oh yeah,
Pearl, he knows what he's doing. Is he you still a favorite there? Auburn fans really like their head coach, their basketball head coach.
very much. Yes, very much. Yeah.
How about their football coach? What about Brian
Yeah, it's
Harson
mixed. Yeah.
next? And is that because of course, you can simply say it was one pretty poor year. The team lost five straight to end the season.
Yep.
And the big loss, of course, was the Alabama game. How different is the offseason? If they beat Alabama, they win a game they probably should have won, they win the bowl game. Is it a lot different or just a little different?
Probably a lot different. There'd be a lot more energy around the program, a lot more enthusiasm, excitement. Recruiting would probably be better. You don't lose your final five games. You get a big win over Alabama. That would be definitely a jump start to recruiting also. So yeah, I think it would be a lot different.
So Bo Nix is one of 19 transfers who transferred out.
That's about right. Some of the I think one or two of those were walk-ons, but basically, yes, 17 or 18 scholarship players. Yes.
Okay, and so that leaves T.J. Finley as the lone starter who has experience at quarterback with Auburn. They bring in a kid from Texas A&M, and then
Right.
you got the Oregon transfer, and then a freshman. So
Right.
is this clearly Finley's team? Do you think one of these three guys has a chance either this year or next year to play?
Yeah, I don't think this is Finley's team. He went 0 and I guess it was 3 or 4 as a starter. So he really didn't do anything to necessarily grab hold of that position. And Zach Calzada's come in. He's over his shoulder injury, which limited him in the spring. And I think it's going to be him, TJ. And then, I wouldn't rule out Robbie Ashford from Oregon. I know he hasn't played a lot of football the last couple of years, but he had a really strong spring game leading that second team offense. So I think it's a true three quarterback race right now. And I do think that Zach Calzada is probably the guy to beat. That's just my opinion. I don't have necessarily somebody tell me that. It's just my opinion.
Okay. And yeah, because I honestly, when you watch Finley play, I don't think I've ever seen anything like it because he's so big. I've never seen a
Yeah.
guy that big play quarterback. It doesn't make sense really when you think about it. Has he lost any weight at all?
Not that I know of. His biggest issue is accuracy, especially on the shorter passes, right? Because he doesn't have a lot of touch. He tends to sort of fire it in there like a fastball
Yeah,
sometimes, and
yeah,
that can be an issue. So, I know that's something he works on, like all quarterbacks do, work on to, get their fundamentals right. And, we'll see if he's improved in that area. He had a really rough spring game, did not perform well at all. And I just think a lot of people feel like Calzada's got a little bit more of a stronger arm. He did beat Alabama, his best games at Texas
that's true.
A&M, so he's got that on his resume, which is always a plus among Auburn folks. So,
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes, but
Okay.
it's going to be one of the more important position battles, of course, for Auburn this spring.
Running back seems to be pretty set. We
Yeah,
talked last year about Bigsby coming off big freshman season. He's almost at 2,000 yards now for his career, but his average did drop a bit. Uh, it's interesting that his average went from 6 to 4.9, and the freshman Hunter last year, his average was 6.7. Is
yeah.
that just Hunter had snaps at a different scheme? Or was it a Bigsby deal? Because I look, nothing wrong with Bigsby and almost 5 yards a carry, and still we know how good he is. But was that
Yeah.
more of a Bigsby deal, or just or maybe even Hunter playing better than most people expected?
Well, Jarquez Hunter had a nice run there, especially early in the season. He really tailed off there the second half. I think teams know that Tank Bigsby is by far Auburn's best player on offense,
Yep.
so they scheme defensively to stop him. And until this offensive line, proves they can get some push and open up some holes, it's going to be really tough for Auburn and Tank Bisbee to have one of those years that he's capable of having. Because I feel like he's capable of rushing for 14 or 1,600 yards and scoring, 15 plus touchdowns. I think he has that ability in him, but he needs some help from the guys around him.
Okay. And then speaking of that offensive line, so 4 starters are back. Is that correct? Including Kendra Jones. I believe he might be the top lineman right now if you're looking at potential prospects.
Well, it's interesting. They got 8 players back with 121 starts between them.
Okay.
That is a ton of experience for an offensive line, right? But it's not necessarily a very good offensive line, at least if you look at last year. So Kendra Jones, he has a chance to be Auburn's best guy. He started for a couple of years. He's just a junior, a fourth-year junior, so you would think that he's going to take a natural step forward. They like Killian Zaire, who's going to probably move into the starting job at left tackle.
Okay.
He's a junior college transfer from Germany. Sort of has spent the last couple of years overcoming a knee injury and sort of learning, to play American football, so to speak. So they feel like he has a lot of potential, maybe even next level potential there. So he's definitely one to watch. And then a senior that's really come on here in the past 6 to 8 months is Cameron Stutz. Hasn't played or started much at all, but he is making a push for that starting position right next to Killian at left guard. So they do have some competition there, and maybe an ability to be better with some new personnel on there. But it's sort of wait and see and prove it on the field type for me.
Yeah, because one of the other things, recruiting couldn't have helped with what happened last season. So as you mentioned, recruiting wise, is there a player that can compete for playing time at all on either side of the ball, especially even the offensive line?
Not the offensive line. That's been an area where they have not recruited well, especially high school players. They definitely signed some players that are going to help them right away. At receiver, Camden Brown is a kid they got out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Auburn does split practices to start camp where they go with the veterans first and then they let the newcomers come in and work on their own, right?
Okay.
They moved Camden Brown from the newcomers to the veterans after day 1. That tells you a little bit about his ability, plus his preparation, just getting ready for camp, learning the offense. Because that's one of the reasons they split them up, so they can learn what they're doing. Jadarian Rhyme is a kid that was committed to LSU. Auburn flipped him. He's a cornerback. Auburn's had a great run of NFL cornerbacks over the past 7 or 8 years. I think he's probably the next one there.
Okay.
He's playing. Really, some of the best players they signed this class were defensive backs. Austin Osbury was the most highly rated player in this class. He can play safety or nickel, maybe even corner. He's going to play for sure, I would say. And then, at safety, they've got a wide open position opposite one starting position open. I think freshman Caleb Wooden is a guy that could certainly win that job. He's the younger brother of Colby Wooden, who's a starting defensive lineman. And they also brought in an Iowa State transfer, Craig McDonald, at safety too. So that's a position that is another one where there's a lot of competition. There's, at least for the start of camp, Zion Puckett will be the other returning starter, and they're trying to find somebody to slot in there with him.
All right. Let's talk a little bit more about the defense. The only other player really worth mentioning, by the way, on offense was the tight end Shanker.
Yeah.
And that's because of the fact that finally Auburn started, or at least with Brian Harsin there, throwing the football to the tight end position.
Yeah.
Because I was shocked to see that he broke Auburn records for receiving. Not only 33 receptions, 413 yards. Those were records. I was like, wow, that just shows you how little Auburn in their history has thrown to their tight ends.
Yep. So, and he's back for a super senior year, and Auburn's got all their tight ends back, basically. They got a couple of juniors behind him, or 3 of them, and Tyler Fromm, and Brandon Frazier and Luke Deal, 3 guys that play a lot of football, especially Fromm and Deal. And then they got a talented freshman coming in. I don't know how much Micah Riley Decker is going to play, but I think they're pretty high on his future too. So that's one of the better positions on the offensive side of the ball as far as talent and depth.
Okay, so now defense, you look up front, and you mentioned Wooden. So you got Colby. You got Colby right now is let's see. One of the things that I noticed about Colby is that he's so versatile. Here's a guy that played defensive tackle. in 2020. Moved out to the edge last year, and in both years, really pretty similar as far as the stats were concerned. So, is he fixated now? You think on the edge, or is he still going to be a guy that you're just going to rotate around?
No, they want to rotate him around because that makes defenses have a tough time accounting for him. So he is going to play the three technique at D tackle. He is going to move out to defensive end. He's probably going to play some edge too. Very talented. He's certainly an NFL player, a guy that's going to go in the draft next year, I would think. And if I had to pick the best unit on this team overall, it's the defensive line. They're talented. They've got NFL guys on that front, and they've got some depth there too that's pretty good. So, if everything goes right, this defensive line could be really good, and this defense can be pretty good too. The one thing that's probably missing is a lot of depth. I think Derrick Hall and Eku Leota are two of the best edge rushers in the conference, but they only have, basically two other scholarship guys. One of them was a Western Kentucky transfer. Another guy was a redshirt freshman. So no real proven depth behind them. So it'll be vital for this defense to keep both Derrick Hall and Eku Leota healthy.
Okay, so now Leota, it doesn't have the stats as the other guys, but he's somebody that definitely is going to get a heck of a lot of playing time. And you believe, like you just said, you think he's one of the better edge rushers.
I do, and that you're going to see Echo and Derrick on the field a lot together in pass rushing situations. That's why that depth is such a concern there at that position.
Okay, and then of course Derrick Hall that you mentioned led the team last year in tackles for loss and sacks. Are they more? When I hear about these guys, what their skills seem to be more pass rush ability as opposed to their run defense. Is that fair or unfair?
Actually, I think they've upgraded their run defense too. They got Jason Jones. He's a 6'6", 330-pound nose guard from Oregon.
Another Oregon kid.
Yep, he's been terrific in camp and in spring practice. They feel like he's one of those space heaters in the middle that sort of frees up guys like Hall, like Colby Wooden, like Marcus Harris, who came in at defensive tackle and played terrific last year. He's back again. They got a transfer, I think it's from Memphis, Morris Joseph, who's another guy that's going to be a good player. Jeremiah Wright is back at nose guard. He was a starter last spring until he injured his knee and got a bunch of depth back. And they feel like one of their signees in the 2022 class, Jeffrey Mba, originally from France, junior college player, 6'6", every bit of 315, is probably the quickest player, the quickest big man on the team. He's probably a guy that's going to take some time, right, to come around. Hadn't played a lot of American football, but they feel like he has the ability to be a special player too eventually. So that part of the team, that defensive line, has got some real talent and some real depth.
Sounds like it. And then at linebacker, even though McLean's gone, and by the way, McLean is one of my draft sleepers because I know a lot of people don't know about him. And even though he was second team SEC, you would think that he'd have a little bit, but he doesn't measure up here, whether it's the speed or it's the size or whatever. But fact is we all know how good of a player he is, and that's why I put him on one of my sleeper teams. But still, big loss for Auburn. But the 5-star linebacker Papo, I mean, what a big loss he was last year. So having him back should be just amazing for the defense.
Yeah, he's like a team leader, coach off the field type too, along with having some real good ability, real good sideline to sideline quickness and speed, I think. A little iffy there, who's going to settle in along with Owen Popo. Not a lot of experience, but they do have some veteran guys. Cam Riley is a junior. Wesley Steiner is a junior. Both have played some backup, snaps and such, but not really been asked to do a whole lot. So they're going to have to step up big time this fall and take over, a starting role. And then they did bring in one transfer there, Eugene Asante from North Carolina. He's one of those smaller, quicker, faster kids, that can help out their linebacker, maybe on special teams too. But that's probably the one area on defense that's a little bit questionable. They do have some numbers there, just a little unproven there, other than Owen Popo, who's had a bit of an injury history too.
Okay, and then at the defensive backfield, McCreary gone, Monday gone. By the way, Monday is also on one of my lists.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are
Suffered
big.
a tough knee injury, so he's going to be out for a while, unfortunately.
Yeah, I heard that. That is unfortunate. And then the transfers in though, you
Yep.
mentioned McDonald, and then
Yep.
another Oregon kid, DJ
Yep.
James, right?
Yep.
So
DJ James
that's
is playing a lot. You got Nehemiah Pritchett and Jalen Simpson back at cornerback, who played a ton of snaps and been really good for Auburn. So, and then I mentioned JD Rim as one of the freshmen who have been really good so far. So you've got really good, talented, deep rotation there at cornerback. Donovan Kaufman is a guy who transferred from Vanderbilt a year ago. Has had a great offseason. They feel like he's going to step in at nickel and be really, really good. And then the safety position, Zion Puckett is there, and then they're trying to find that other starter we talked about there. But fairly deep, some real talent there. Another strength of this team would be the secondary. I put it probably behind the defensive line. It's probably the second best position unit on the team.
All right, and then the secondary, the special teams overall was pretty good last year. So, no reason to think that with pretty much everybody back that they can't be just as good, if not better. Correct?
Yeah, the Anders Carlson's back. You know, he hurt his knee last year, had surgery, but he's back. And then they signed one of the best kickers in the country, Alex McPherson, as a freshman. So they've got some competition there now, and they've got two really good kickers. And their punter is back too, which I don't remember his numbers, but I think at the end of the year, shoot.
Yeah, they were pretty good.
Yeah,
44 and a 41.8 net.
Yeah, Oscar Chapman was really good coming from Australia, and he's back for his junior season. I would expect Auburn to have one of the best special teams units in the conference too. So, yeah, that's always a plus.
And 23 of his 57 punts, it looks like, were inside the 20. That's always helpful. Another Aussie kid.
Yep.
It's an Aussie invasion of punters all over college football. You know how it is. Okay, so the schedule is tough as usual. Of course, it's going to be tough, especially when you got to take on Penn State again. At least Penn State's at home this year, so that'll be helpful. San Jose State's never a gimme, especially when the team struggled against Georgia State last year, right around the same time. But overall, as far as home away, how does it compare?
Well, I think the most important part of that schedule is the first 5 games are all at home. And this team desperately needs to get off to a good start because of last year, because of some of the turmoil in the offseason, and because of recruiting. All those things are pointing toward, if they get off to a good start, you can get things rolling. There'll be a lot more excitement, a lot more confidence in the program. If you don't, things could turn ugly really, really, really fast. So those first 2 games, Mercer and San Jose State, you would think Auburn's going to win those. But then you got Penn State, Missouri, LSU. All winnable or losable games. Certainly Penn State and LSU, which will be the more tougher opponents, you would think. Missouri may be pretty solid too, but you got to come out of that threesome with at least 2 wins, right? You want to be 4-1, 5-0, going to Georgia in October, where you've been pretty much beaten up pretty bad over the last 10 to 15 years. I think since 2005, since Auburn has won in Sanford Stadium.
Wow. And we know just the defense is going to have to be, if they're going to have a very successful season, it's going to have the makings of one of their better defenses that the program has had. And they've got the talent for that. So it's not like it's a pipe dream, correct? That's something that could work out. And obviously the quarterback position, as you mentioned, is just so important. You just can't keep handing the ball off to Bigsby and Hunter and expect to have results. You got to be able to throw the football. So if they can get good quarterback play and the defense stays healthy, then it should be a successful season.
I think, to me, when I just look at it on paper, this looks like a 500 type team. But if things go right, as you mentioned, at quarterback, the receiver position, they got 12 scholarship players. It was not good last year, but, most of those players are back. They got some new guys in. They got 2 transfers there. So, Coy Moore from LSU could be a player for them. Daslin Worsham from Miami. So there's potential there for Auburn to improve, to take some steps forward. But, they got to go out there and do it, right? It's just talk right now. We're in preseason.
Does that 500 type team get Bryan Harsin a 2023 season?
That is a really, really interesting question.
As long as they beat Alabama, I guess, it's going to work out.
Yeah, they got to go to Tuscaloosa, which has not been a good place for them recently. Last win there was 2010 in the comeback. But I think they're going to have to be a little bit over 500, and I think recruiting is another issue you have to look at with him. I think that's one of the ways he's being evaluated. Right now, Auburn does not have a highly rated recruiting class. They've got 6 commitments. They got to pick it up there too. They really do. I think they're pouring toward those first 5 games to help them pick that up, right? So everything's got to work together
Yep.
for them to get it going. If they falter there, if recruiting doesn't pick up, you're a 500 team, it's going to be really, really rough. There's going to be a lot of negativity around the fan base, and it's just going to be hard to overcome that.
Yeah, I agree with this with the start. They cannot get off to a slow start because I'm not even sure Harsin will make it to the Alabama game if they get off to a slow start.
I'm actually with you. If they're 2-3, or
And then
if
they
they're
get blown out by
3-2 and they
Georgia.
get blown out, right. That's just that just sends them off the cliff unless something crazy happens over the next month or so.
How's the NIL situation with Auburn?
Not as good as it should be. They're getting beat by other teams because their program is not up to the same standards, and I don't think it's just money. I just think it's organization and the way they put out stuff to kids. Just their presentation. It's just not up to the standards of other schools. They're just getting beat by schools they shouldn't be getting beat by constantly, and I think they're working to improve that. But it's
that part of the excitement or the lack of excitement and backing a coach the way that they should.
Yeah,
It all part of it.
I mean, some coaches in some schools have taken a hold of this, right, and made it big.
Like
Texas A&M had the
yes.
#1 class in the country.
Yeah.
Michigan State is doing some incredible things coming down the South and winning a bunch of recruiting battles that maybe a school like Auburn should be winning, right? It's a lot closer to Florida and Georgia than Michigan State is, but they're not. So these things that other schools are doing can be very, very effective. Auburn ain't getting it done right now. They're trying to, but again, it's put them behind the 8 ball, which is not a good place to be for a new coach.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you some. Okay, so as far as we mentioned some of the recruits, give me who's at the top. Do you have a top recruit that might either be a true freshman or it could have been a top recruit last year that you feel could end up being the next big dog on campus, whether they have one or not? Even if there's like 5 or 6 guys and they're not like a true number one, can you give me like maybe just one that you really like?
I really like J.D. Rim as a first-round NFL type prospect, potentially at cornerback.
Okay.
I think Caleb Wooden, who was just a 3-star, is going to be just like his brother and play way above his ranking and end up being an NFL player at safety eventually for Auburn. May or may not start this year. My guess is he's going to eventually start this year at safety.
Okay.
I think Camden Brown, who's 6'3", about 200 pounds, can really, really run, is going to be a special wide receiver at Auburn. He's got talent, but he's showing already that he's got that work ethic, that willingness to do what it takes to be good. And that combination usually produces a pretty good player in the future.
Okay.
And then I mentioned Jeffrey Mba, but you may not notice him against San Jose State or against Penn State, but I think by midseason he's going to start standing out, making plays, and eventually going to be a really, really exciting defensive lineman for Auburn. He's a JUCO transfer from France originally.
Yes. Okay. Handicapping. Give anybody out there that likes to handicap and wager on teams and so forth. Give me something maybe they don't know. Something that would be you would consider like a nice little tip or something that like for instance, I was looking over. This is Mark Lawrence's Playbook magazine. He's one of our partners here, and he has an interesting stat here. The last 3 losing seasons by the Tigers have resulted in 3 winning efforts the following season, going 29-11 overall.
Yeah.
So Auburn, when they have a losing season, they've done a really good job the very next year of rebounding, which shows you that Brian Harsin better keep that going. But do you have anything similar like that, like a tip or something out there for handicappers regarding Auburn's football team this year?
Well, I'm not a betting man. Don't even pay attention to it, so I apologize for that. But
it's okay.
The one thing I would say is Jordan-Hare Stadium is the place where top teams come to die. You almost saw it last year in Alabama,
That's
right?
true.
And of course, I'm sure if you took Auburn in the points last year, you would have come away with a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
But
I had the money line too, though,
yep.
and that
But
was a big one.
when you've got a chance to take Auburn as a dog at home against a highly ranked team, you better jump on that chance. Unless it's one of those seasons where everything's falling apart, which is not out of the case this year, but we'll see.
Yes.
We'll see how it goes. But if they're playing well and they've got a highly ranked team coming in, especially if they're playing at night, do not count out Jordan-Hare Stadium.
Okay.
It can be a difference maker.
Maybe those two games might be the Penn State game and maybe the Texas A&M game in November.
Penn State's at 2:30, so it's not a night start,
Not a
but
night game. Okay. So
we'll see.
Texas A&M, maybe, possibly.
Yeah.
Could be.
Yep.
It's late in the season. We don't know
Yep,
about Arkansas either, but
Yep.
If Arkansas is favored at Auburn, and I think we already have some problems with Auburn.
Yeah,
Not
things
that
are
it's
not
not saying
going-
Arkansas
yeah.
is not playing well, but that's just
Yeah.
shouldn't be Auburn.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
Yeah, things aren't going right. And finally, is Papo the top prospect? Like if you were talking about 23 draft, maybe Bigsby comes out, but if anybody that was eligible came out,
Right.
who would be the top prospect for Auburn?
I would say Derrick Hall, number 1.
I recall number 1.
Colby Wooden or Tank Bigsby, number 2, 3. Owen Popo, he's not one of those big, tall, long linebackers.
That's
So
true.
I think that's going to be one of those things where he maybe goes a little bit farther down the draft, but certainly an NFL prospect because of his speed and athleticism and the way he's going to test, which is going to be, incredible.
That's true. Yes.
And then we'll see. There could be some cornerbacks. We'll see what Nehemiah Pritchett and Jalen Simpson can do this year. They both have a lot of ability, have a lot of experience. So there are a couple of guys to really watch closely, I think, for the NFL draft next spring. And then I think Marcus Harris or maybe even Jason Jones, 2 other defensive linemen, could potentially play their way into the draft. We'll see. We'll just see. They may need another year of seasoning, but those are 2 more guys to keep an eye on.
Bryan, great job as always. Auburn.rivals.com. So what's the latest as far as if you want a subscription? How does that work out?
Yeah, you sign up right online, and it's just over $8 a month if you sign up for our annual plan. And, you can get all the information on football, recruiting, basketball, baseball, softball, anything really. And we got a great message board, a lot of fun there to connect to other Auburn folks. And you can also follow me on Twitter at BMattAU.
Awesome, Bryan. Also want to let everybody know that you can subscribe here on our channel. We're going to continue these interviews with these great analysts for, matter of fact, we have Gary Furman, who is a Miami Hurricane Cane Sport Rivals guy.
Yep.
He'll be joining me later today. We're also going to be talking Ole Miss football later in the week, Oklahoma State football, Conference USA football. So that's just the beginning here on Prime Sports Network. Bryan, I appreciate it, and I hope we get an opportunity to talk during the season, because if we do, then that means things are going pretty well for Auburn.
Sounds great.
Could mean a coaching change, but I hope it's because things are going pretty well.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bryan.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thank you.